Welcome to Today All Day's celebration of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Our culture, our stories. I'm Vicki Nguyen. Over the next half hour, we'll highlight the vibrant Asian American community, a culture with roots in the largest continent in the world. We'll explore cuisines that unite loved ones around the table and the globe. We'll reconnect with traditional religious and spiritual practices of the East brought here to the West, and learn about an artist who is creating beats that harmonize the unique yet complex tapestry of cultures that make us who we are. But in light of the recent hate crimes targeting the AAPI community, we can't ignore how bigotry and racism impact Asian Americans every day. Despite these enormous challenges, seeing our community come together reminds me how proud I am of my heritage. So who makes up our vast Asian American and Pacific Islander population, and what do these experiences look like in the United States for our community? Take a look.
I consider myself Asian American, and then a subset of that being Pakistani American. I love my heritage because I think it's rich and vibrant and layered.
Hearing the stories of my mom and my grandparents, immigration, and how they wanted a better life for our entire family.
I'm Vietnamese American, and I was adopted when I was 5 months old. And as a kid, my mom, she tried encouraging me to learn more about my culture.
My mother being Japanese and my dad being from America, there's always this idea that, you'd have to pick a side of culture. You're not losing one culture or the other, you're actually gaining two.
The Asian American and Pacific Islander, or AAPI, population in the United States is diverse.
For Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders, as America grew geographically, where they lived became part of the United States. Asian Americans are more than 20 million people in the US who trace their roots to countries in East, Southeast Asia, and the Indian subcontinent.
And growing at a rapid rate, 81% in 19 years, with the population expected to surpass 35 million people by 2060.
Those who immigrate into the US are a group that have different starting points. Those leaving as refugees, those who are coming to have better opportunities to work in the US, those who are joining their families who did immigrate into the US.
It's what Russell Jung, professor of Asian American Studies at San Francisco State, intimately understands from stories passed down through his family.
My family settled in Monterey, California in the 1860s, lived there for 4 decades until their landlord evicted them.
Jung says they were forced off their land because of anti-Chinese sentiment.
A mysterious fire burned down the entire village. The landlord then fenced off the area so the Chinese couldn't return. Consequently, my great-grandparents had to move to San Francisco Chinatown as the only place of refuge.
It's a pattern of bigotry that's been repeated over decades.
In the 19th century, when diseases came from Asia, Chinese were blamed for it. It goes on to Japanese American incarceration during World War II. This threat of Asians as being outsiders and dangerous continued after 9/11, so that South Asians, Muslims, and Arab Americans were attacked and faced racist policies due to Islamophobia.
More recently, in the past year, anti-Asian hate crimes reported to police in 16 cities jumped a staggering 164%, spurring Russell to launch Stop AAPI Hate in partnership with the organizations Chinese for Affirmative Action and the Asian Pacific Policy Planning Council.
I asked my 94-year-old mom about the anti-Asian violence that we've seen perpetrated against our elders. I asked, what would you do now? And she said now, I guess I would only go to Clement Street, which is the Chinese ethnic enclave. Over centuries past, but just like my great-grandparents, my elderly mom has to retreat to a Chinese neighborhood to protect herself from American racism. Things really haven't improved.
Good morning. Breaking news, deadly rampage. 3 shootings overnight, all at Atlanta area massage parlors.
Alice Soy, an elementary school teacher and activist in New York, channels her anger into action, taking a stand against the hate.
The day after the shooting, one of my 4th graders called me China to my face in front of the entire 4th grade class that I was teaching at the time. And that also made me just so upset. I spoke to the entire 5th grade afterwards, and I said, sometimes things that you hear or might find out are not true. And it's hurtful to blanketly mark an entire group of people based on just one thing you've heard that's unfounded.
Alice doesn't leave the conversation in the classroom. She speaks out at rallies against AAPI hate.
Will it be me or my mom you shut down out the concrete floor? What if I spoke up? How you like that? I'm dynamite, I'm a firecracker, and I won't be typecast. I won't.
Some famous faces have been sharing a similar message.
And as an Asian American, I can tell you that my family and so many other families, we come and we add to the fabric of this country and we make it stronger, we make it better.
To encourage understanding.
We may have very distinct and unique histories in the United States, but one thing we all have in common is that we've suffered as minorities here.
We have people being attacked. We have people who are just fighting for their lives. And now everything that we do, has a deeper purpose to it.
It's so important for us to be outside for our pain to be heard and acknowledged. And I think that when we show up in droves at rallies across the United States, the world is seeing a message that we do matter, that we do take our place as Asian Americans, and we're proud.
Proud of our culture, proud of our traditions, and proud of who we are. We hope compassion and understanding grow as more members of the AAPI community speak out and share their stories. Up next, meet two women who celebrate their heritage by creating new flavors in the kitchen.
Everyone in the AAPI community have their own specific cultural traditions.
Vietnamese New Year, there's a tradition of getting a red envelope. The red envelope is a sign of wealth, happiness, and good luck for the year.
My mom would have all the children learn traditional Chinese dances for Chinese New Year.
Ramadan is a really special month because you get to see your family more. And I think it's the one month where I really feel connected to my culture.
We're back. Food acts as the language of love for many Asian American communities. How often have you been greeted by family or friends with, "Hi, have you eaten?" And with a continent characterized by hundreds of regional cuisines, Asian Americans embrace these diverse flavors in their own unique ways. Meet two chefs embarking on their own culinary adventures, serving up traditional dishes with a twist.
Food, in a way, unlocks a lot of stories.
It's this emotional connection that we get through eating that food that is really irreplaceable.
My name is Chitra Agarwal. I'm a co-founder at Brooklyn Deli, where we make sauces and condiments inspired by my family's recipes from India.
My name is Katevi, and I'm the chef and owner of Dumpling Club, a weekly subscription service that features a rotating menu of dumplings and Asian dishes.
I started Brooklyn Deli in 2014. Our first products at Brooklyn Deli were my achars, which are a staple Indian condiment. They're kind of like this spicy, sour, a little bit sweet. So you add just a little bit and it kind of just makes the dish like amazing. I developed a lot of the recipes for achar using what I was getting in my farm share. So I was making achar from heirloom tomatoes, garlic, gooseberries. I wouldn't say that it's authentic Indian food. It's very much inspired by my heritage, but it's authentic to me.
My grandfather comes from a region in northern China that specializes in dumplings. And to him, dumplings were the perfect food, the best food. I use all sorts of influences in the dumplings. For example, influences from my husband's Austrian side. That's not traditionally how dumplings would be made. I'm learning to be really comfortable with that. In the beginning, I felt like that wasn't truly authentic. But I actually now feel that that's very authentic to me and my experience.
A labor of love learned from generations before them.
The pleating sort of represents on the outside the amount of care that's been put into this food. Whenever we made them as a family, seeing the pleats that my mom or that my grandfather added to the dumplings would remind me that they were the ones who prepared this food for me. My
My father's mother, we were just very close. I can still remember the food that she would give me. I can still taste it. They're kind of like food memories from when I was really young, and those continued on as I visited her every year in India. Every trip, we would be in the kitchen.
Growing up, we didn't have regular access to Asian grocery, but I learned about the importance of food from my mom. She would use spaghetti whenever she was making stir-fried noodles. Her creativity, that creative spirit that she had when it came to replicating her home food through whatever ingredients that she had on hand, that's what I feel really inspired by.
Both women left stable jobs for their culinary careers.
It was a really scary time because, I had been working for over a decade in positions where I had benefits, I had an ongoing salary that I could count on.
I left Google in the fall of 2019, and already that year I was starting to make dumplings, send them around to friends and family, and when I decided to really start in earnest was in February 2020, conveniently 1 month before the pandemic hit and everything shut down. I didn't have a steady job or an income at that time, and whenever I had a spare moment, I'd fold dumplings, and then I would stay up all hours editing footage and putting it up on Instagram, and we were just trying to survive.
Despite the pandemic, their businesses not only survived, but thrived.
Our public sales tend to sell out within a few minutes. One time it sold out in less than a minute.
For us, it's been great because more people want to try the flavors that we're putting out there and want to learn more about Indian food and culture. Everything that I really learned how to make, I learned from different family members. So I feel like, in some sense, the Brooklyn Deli recipes also are a way for our family recipes to kind of live on.
When my parents came to the States, they really came here with nothing. And I'm super cognizant of that now, that it's a huge privilege to be able to do what I love, to go after what I love. And that has come from years of sacrifice and hard work from my parents. And knowing that, I want to take that privilege and make sure that I do something really positive with it.
Although Dumpling Club is currently at capacity with its subscribers, the community continues to grow on Instagram. And you can find Brooklyn Deli at supermarkets nationwide. Coming up, see how young Asian Americans are reclaiming traditional religious and spiritual beliefs by practicing Buddhism, a religion with deep connections to many countries throughout Asia.
Dim sum, boba, pho, sushi, Korean barbecue.
Cold buckwheat noodles, which is called naengmyeon.
Food is quite an access point for people to build understanding.
It's estimated that approximately 500 million people practice Buddhism worldwide. But here in the U.S., Buddhists make up just 1% of the adult population. A group of young Asian Americans based in Seattle, Washington, demonstrate how they're creating a community to reconnect with the faith. Welcome to Virtual Dharma School, where these K through 8th grade students from Tacoma, Washington meet every other Sunday to study Shin Buddhist teachings.
And repeat the Nembutsu with me. Namo Amida Butsu.
Retired elementary school teacher June Akita is the school's superintendent.
Teaching is kind of in my blood, but just in my career, I always believed in the activity, doing something makes it set into your head a little bit better than just hearing someone tell you about it.
Shin Buddhism is one of the largest sects of Buddhism in Japan and one of the most popular in the U.S. It stresses boundless compassion to all sentient beings. Experts believe the religion arrived in the U.S. with the first wave of Japanese immigration around 1900, but kept a low profile because of racism and the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. Akita's parents and 10 of her siblings spent 3 years in those camps, but her mother made sure to pass her religious traditions on to her daughter.
I started Dharma school in Tacoma, actually in 6th grade through high school, went to college, got married, had my kids, and then my mom died. And I needed something to help me explain what just happened. And it just brought me back to the temple.
Namo Dabusu, Namo Dabusu.
A local group of Japanese American college grads in Seattle recites Nembutsu, one of their core practices meant to express gratitude for Amida Buddha, seen as the embodiment of truth. They've been reconnecting with their Buddhist culture over this past year.
After internment, a lot of our grandparents, great-grandparents, they didn't want to appear different to an average American. So, along with that, they didn't teach their kids Japanese. My first name is Trevor. It's not something like phonetically Japanese or something like that. My parents don't really speak Japanese. And one of the things they did keep was the Buddhism as a religion, which is why I think a lot of us cling to it very heavily, because it gives us a sense of cultural identity.
To foster that sense of connection, Trevor and his friend Devin Matsumoto formed the Young Buddhist Editorial. It's an online forum that launched in February 2020 as a space for young Asian American Buddhists to share their perspectives on the religion. Matsumoto is the group's president.
So we'll start off with these two. I actually was not really big into Buddhism until maybe my senior year of high school. I used to always tell my mom that when I turn 18, I'm going to become a Christian. And I think a lot of that was internalized racism. To be Buddhist wasn't very cool or very accepted. And it was around those times when I was like looking at who's talking about Buddhism in the United States. Most of the times it's not people who look like us, Asian Americans. It's usually more middle-class white men who have come into Buddhism later on in their life. We aren't being represented. We're not being seen.
Amid the recent spike of anti-Asian violence and hate, the Young Buddhist Editorial has become a space to discuss these traumas and raise awareness about social justice movements.
We've especially been emphasizing creating a space for people to come together and talk about their trauma that they've experienced.
Oftentimes in Buddhism, we're told we can't feel anger, we can't feel frustration, we can't feel rage. You know, we are human first. We are people first before we're Buddhists. So we have to understand that these emotions make us who we are.
The group infuses their discussions on race and the pandemic through the lens of Buddhist teachings.
One thing we really like to emphasize is interdependence. Everything is connected. Freedom comes with responsibility, and our responsibility to other people in our world, other people in our community, and other people who we've never interacted with.
Okay, Dharma School students, you know the drill.
Back at Virtual Dharma School, the next generation of Buddhists is learning the guiding principles of this religion in hopes of creating a more compassionate world.
Put your hands together and gasho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
The Young Buddhist Editorial Group knows they have a tough road ahead of them when it comes to attracting young people to their religion. According to Pew Research, 35% of Americans ages 18 to 29 are unaffiliated with any religion. Still, the group remains optimistic as they continue the dialogue. Up next, rapper Ruby Ibarra shares how she uses her music to talk about her immigrant experience, plus how she's helping find a cure for COVID-19. Just ahead.
A lot of our thinking has to do with being with family, checking in on our neighbor when it's Ramadan.
Willing to share anything to neighbors.
Get family together and have Kentucky Fried Chicken during the summer. Sometimes we might go to a Chinese restaurant and have dim sum when people were visiting from overseas.
The importance of relationships and family, not only just biological family, but chosen family as well.
Welcome back. Filipina-American Ruby Ibarra is a rapper, producer, spoken word artist, and you can also add scientist to that list. The Bay Area musician has been making a big impact in her community, doing research on COVID-19, and in the music she writes, making beats and writing rhymes that she hopes to inform and inspire with.
And that's where I'm never giving up, who I am or why I'm standing up. And I ain't ever need no answer luck to understand myself, cause that's enough. Yeah, that's enough.
This is where rapper Ruby Ibarra shines.
Cause I'm finally here. Get your hands in the air. Now the greatest is here. I'ma make this my year.
But when she's not behind the mic, Ruby is in a lab working full-time in the biotech industry.
I naturally constantly ask myself, why do things work the way they are? And I found that science was a subject that gave me a lot of those answers. Being a scientist has given me a lot of satisfaction in terms of the work that I do and knowing that it impacts people all across the world.
It's work that's put her on the front lines amid the pandemic, doing research on COVID-19.
A lot of the work that we do now involve projects and doing research around finding a cure for COVID-19, and of course also doing a lot of the testing. And with music at the same time, I also see that as a medicine. Ultimately, it's a way for people to have cope, especially during these difficult times.
Born in the Philippines, Ruby was first introduced to rap music when she was just 4 years old.
I remember I was at home with my family, and there was this rapper named Francis Magalona who was performing on TV. I instantly gravitated towards the sounds that were coming out of this performer's mouth. I think up until that point, I hadn't realized that you're able to use your voice as an instrument.
In the 90s, Ruby and her family immigrated to the U.S. and settled in California's Bay Area.
Everything was vastly different for me and my family, and I think, a lot of my way of thinking, my identity, how I navigated the spaces around me, all of that were impacted by this move to this new country.
Growing up, Ruby listened to rap icons like Tupac and the group Wu-Tang Clan, their music playing from every corner of her neighborhood.
I completely fell in love, and I remember being a little kid wanting to emulate them. And even until this day, I see, a lot of those influences reflected in my music.
But no one inspired her more than Lauryn Hill.
When I understood that Lauryn Hill was not only this incredible artist, but also a woman of color, and the stories that she shared were also very relatable and things that I could identify with, I think that to me gave me a sense of empowerment and inspiration.
As a teenager, Ruby started writing poetry and music, performing spoken word at local shows.
That also helped me with my confidence, but also allowed me to be able to use my voice in a way that I never really thought that I could.
It wasn't until 2017 when Ruby made her mark on the music scene, releasing her deeply personal debut album, Circa 91. Through her lyrics, Ruby chronicles the story of her immigrant experience in songs like 7,000 Miles.
7,000 miles from home, but a million more to go. Gotta make it on my own. I can feel I'm getting close.
And Someday, a song about her mother's struggles navigating a new country.
Actually reduced lunches while my mama skipped her lunchtime. 9 to 5 minimum wage. She got the bus line.
It wasn't long before Circa 91 amassed a cult following from fans who saw themselves in Ruby's rhymes.
People would come up to me and tell me that for the first time they felt seen, or they felt heard, or they wished they had a project like this or music like this growing up. I think that's what gave me a sense of responsibility, where I felt like I have to keep going, I have to keep making music like this.
Since her album's debut, Ruby has taken her music to a national stage, appearing in a MasterCard campaign alongside platinum recording artist SZA.
Run my stories now, paint the cover now. My feet are running, but my soul is planted on the ground.
Today, Ruby is giving back by creating Panay's Rising, a scholarship program for young women in the Filipino community. And she hopes now, more than ever, they feel empowered to share their stories too.
I think about how much work that needs to still be done in this country. At the end of the day, we need to realize that it takes more than just representation to fix a lot of the racism, the deep-seated racism that exists in this country. I think that's also going to take normalizing Asian American stories, making sure that not only our faces, but our voices and our experiences are part of American history. We need to make sure that Asian Americans aren't seen as the foreigner or as the other, but as part of America.
Ruby is currently working on her sophomore album that she hopes to release this fall.
I like Awkwafina. Seeing her being a comedian and an actress and all the other things that she is really cool for me.
Hiro Murai has done a bunch of music videos for Childish Gambino. He actually directs his TV show, Atlanta.
Admiral Lakshmi speaks about this immigrant experience.
Drag queen Manila Luzon off Drag Race.
There are so many luminaries in our culture, and many yet to be discovered.
Thank you for joining us as we celebrate Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Whether through music, food, or religion, we hope you've seen the positive ways Asian Americans contribute to the vibrant culture of America. It's our hope that as we embrace the diversity within our AAPI community, we continue to come together, extinguishing the hate and reminding each other that our culture belongs, our stories belong, and we belong.